Good morning. This is Father David here on a foggy morning here outside, and starting in on chapter 21 of the Lenten spring. Men of violence take it by force. And this is a quote from Christ when he says, "The kingdom of God suffers violence, and violent men take it by force." This is what we call spiritual warfare. And it is the reality that we are not engaged in a passive spiritual life. That there is in this chapter with Father Tom, when he, I think, wrote this book, maybe it was it's been, 1983 it was first put out. This was not a phrase, but he actually says, "The struggle is real," which is something that, people say now. But it's true that this is difficult. And oftentimes we are fighting against demonic powers, yes, but at the same time, we are fighting against our own hearts. The spirit that we talk about in the prayer of St. Ephraim, "O Lord and Master of my life, do not give to me the spirit of sloth, despair," and that despair is what Father Tom talks about in this chapter, "lust of power and idle talk." Whether that is an actual personified demon that comes to torment us, or whether it is our own actions and disposition towards life and responsibilities and virtue and everything else, the reality is that we have to push hard against it. And this is going to be another one of those chapters where, honestly, I'm just sort of setting it up, hopefully briefly, and then just to read mainly the passage about the passions from St. John of the Ladder. It's from his book, Ladder of Divine Ascent. This is something that, and really the reason is because we don't fight this in theory. We do a lot of reading as Orthodox, both for spiritual benefit and within our services. We do a lot of talking about the spiritual life. But St. John basically says that this is worked out, this despair is worked through and worked past in action, in our actual, what we do. This despair is not just like, feeling without hope, okay? That's what despair, kind of in our modern context, literally means. But this really just means to be without motivation. It's related to spiritual sloth, right? But this is to really just be, Father Tom says, to be a blah person, incapable of courageous action and daring spiritual exploits. It's how I talk about when people say, being sentimental, which people might say that to be like, oh, you're an emotional person. Well, I tend to be rather in tune with my, strong emotions, sad emotions. I have been told I can wear my heart on my sleeve, for better or for worse. I know there's a time to be, unemotional and just the facts and all this, but I am a rather enthusiastic person. I don't think that is what sentimental means. And in fact, I think the definition of sentimental, my sort of working definition, is tying into this sort of spiritual despair. It's where a person does experience a strong emotional desire to do something and then stays right there. Almost the feeling that if I have thought about it and emoted about it enough, that can take the place, or does in reality, of actually doing it. Okay? Now, the two don't have to be separated either. That's the thing. Is like a lot of people are just, well, just don't worry about it, just do it. No, sometimes it does come with a very strong emotional response. As we're doing it, it can be very cathartic. But we shouldn't replace one for the other. Okay? I'm going to stop there and go into St. John's quote. This person who is suffering from this spiritual despair, okay? In other words, sloth is really the person that's almost like not doing anything and doesn't even care. But then despair is the person, he's figured out kind of something's wrong, but he's not doing what needs to be done to move past it, to struggle past it. St. John Climacus describes him in this way. He talks about healing a wound and does not stop irritating it. He complains of sickness and does not stop eating what is harmful. He prays against it and immediately goes and does it. And when he has done it, he is angry with himself, and the wretched man is not ashamed of his own words. I am doing wrong, he cries, and eagerly continues to do so. Here's my favorite line. His mouth prays against his passion, and his body struggles for it. He philosophizes about death, but he behaves as if he were immortal. He groans over the separation of soul and body, but drowses along as if he were eternal. He talks of temperance and self-control, but he lives for gluttony. He reads about the judgment and begins to smile. He reads about vainglory and is vainglorious while actually reading. He repeats what he has learned about vigil and drops asleep on the spot. He praises prayer, but runs from it as from the plague. He blesses obedience, but he is the first to disobey. He praises detachment, but he is not ashamed to be spiteful and to fight for a rag. When angered, he gets bitter, and he is angered again at his bitterness. And he does not feel that after one defeat, he is suffering another. Having overeaten, he repents, and a little later gives way to it. He blesses silence and praises it with a spate of words. He teaches meekness, and during the actual teaching, frequently gets angry. Having woken from passion, he sighs, and shaking his head, he yields again to passion. He condemns laughter and lectures on mourning with a smile on his face. Before others, he blames himself for being vainglorious, and in blaming himself is only angling for glory for himself. He looks people in the face with passion and talks about chastity. While frequenting the world, he praises the solitary life without realizing that he shames himself. He extols almsgivers and reviles beggars. All the time, he is his own accuser, and he does not want to come to his senses. I will not say cannot. I'm going to leave it right there. May God bless you. You can replay that as many times as you need to. I had to read it a few times and say, ouch. But God bless you. Lord willing, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.